There's a lot into getting a PC. Buying pre-built, building your own, and people will have their gripes about both. And it's a lot to think about. You'll probably hear people say, build your own, it's cheaper, it's easy, a whole lot of stuff. But when you actually look at the parts, it feels like you're trying to read another language. CPUs, GPUs, RAM, SSDs, HDDs. What do they do? How do you know what's good? Well, that's what I'm here for, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. Whether you're building your first gaming PC or just curious about how everything inside the case works, this video is a complete beginner's guide to PC parts. If I missed anything, drop a comment below, breaking down each component, what it does, and what makes it a good choice for your build. Let's get it started. And to kick it off, we got the CPU, or the central processing unit. It's often called the brains of your computer, but in simple terms, a processor is pretty much the decision maker of your PC. Every time you click something, whether launching a game or opening a file, to scrolling on YouTube, that action turns into a set of instructions the CPU reads and then processes. And then it tells the rest of your computer what to do next. Modern CPUs are powerful. They have multiple cores and threads. But you're like, what's a core? What's a thread? What am I looking for? Well, cores are like individual mini processors within the CPU. More cores means it can handle more tasks at once. And threads are virtual versions of cores, letting each physical core do even more work by managing multiple tasks simultaneously. For gaming, a good 6-core CPU like the AMD Ryzen 5 7600X or the Intel i5 13600K hits a great performance to price balance, honestly. But if you're into heavier tasks like editing, 3D rendering, or streaming, then CPUs with 8 or more cores like the Ryzen 9 7950X or the Intel i9 14900K are worth the investment given the 14th generation is known to have some issues. That's why most people nowadays tend to go with AMD. But also, make sure to check your CPU's generation and socket type to match it with the motherboard. Newer CPUs often support faster RAM, PCIe 5.0, and other features that make a big difference in performance and future-proofing. Going into number 2, the motherboard. The motherboard is your system's backbone. It connects all the components, lets them communicate. It determines what CPUs you can use, what type of RAM you can install, how many drives you can hook up. And there's a lot that comes with it. Like we have different sizes. Motherboards come in sizes like ATX, Micro ATX, and Mini ITX. ATX is the most common for full-size builds. Be sure to match your CPU to the right socket type. For example, AM5 for Ryzen 7000 series or LGA 1700 for Intel, 12th, 13th, and 14th gen CPUs. Also, check for chipset features like PCIe 5.0 support, USB-C ports, M.2 slots for SSDs, and built-in Wi-Fi or Bluetooth if you need them. Some boards may not include Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, so double check the specs and make sure if that's important for your build. And here's some recommendations for 2025 about. For AMD or AM5 sockets, the MSI B650 Tomahawk Wi-Fi is a solid all-around board with great VRMs and features, while the Asus ROG Strix X670EF gaming Wi-Fi premium board with PCIe 5.0 and tons of expansion, while the Gigabyte B650 Aorus Elite AX is a good balance of performance and price. But for Intel, the LGA 1700 socket, ASUS TUF Gaming Z790 plus Wi-Fi D4, great for DDR field builds with lots of ports, or the MSI Pro Z790A Wi-Fi, a strong option for productivity and gaming, and the Gigabyte Z790 Aorus Elite AX has great value, supports DDR5 and future upgrades, obviously since it's DDR5. Pick a board that fits your needs and matches the rest of your components, especially your CPU and RAM. And that leads us into number 3, RAM, or random access memory. RAM is your CPU's short-term memory. It temporarily stores data that your CPU or programs are actively using. More RAM helps with multitasking and ensures smoother performance, especially in games and creative applications like Chrome, which somehow takes a lot of RAM for some reason. Not a genuine lot amount, but you will notice a good dip in your FPS in games if you have Chrome open in the background and you have multiple tabs. But with that, for most users, 16 gigabytes of DDR4 or DDR5 is enough. DDR5 is faster and more future-proof, but it is a good bit more expensive. As well, you got to make sure your motherboard can fit DDR5, or vice versa. If you're gaming and streaming though, or editing videos, 32 gigabytes is recommended, but speed and latency also matters with those things. For DDR4, 3200 megahertz or higher is a good starting point. But for DDR5, 5600 to 6000 megahertz is great. And that leads us to number 4. The GPU, or graphics processing unit, graphics card, whatever you want to call it, goes by a bajillion names, so does everything else on this list. But the GPU handles everything visual that includes rendering your desktop or wallpaper, playing videos, and playing games. But there are two main types of graphics: integrated graphics, some that are built into your CPU, but they're actually called APUs, but no one calls it that. They just call it integrated graphics. But back to it. And dedicated graphics cards like NVIDIA's RTX series or AMD's Radeon RX series. For gaming, a dedicated GPU is essential though. Your choice depends on your resolution or what you want the game to be viewed at. There's 1080p, which is like the standard. At least it was a few years ago. Now we're moving to 1440p. But for 1080p gaming, you can use the RTX 3060 or RX 6600. They're both great picks, given the GPU market is really high right now. And it will go down eventually, but for now it may not be the best time to buy a CPU unless you can snag one for a good deal. But for 1440p, look at the RTX 4070, which is a last series GPU, because then now we're on the 50 series, or the RX 7800 XT. But for 4K, you want something high end like the 4080 or 50 series, probably 60, not 60, maybe 70 or above actually. And then the RX 7900 XTX. But they each have this thing called VRAM, and VRAM is pretty much RAM just for the GPU. But one thing I look for is like for 1080p, 8 gigabytes is decent, but 12 gigabytes is better for higher resolution and more modern games. But that's pretty much it. You can look into the finer details eventually, but this is just the basics. We're going to stick to the basics. But that leads us to number 5, which is pretty much more simple, in my opinion, to understand, is the storage, SSD, HDD, whatever you go for. But it's pretty much where your files, games, operating system, and other things you have live, Traditional HDDs, which are slower. They are cheap, but they're slower. But the new main is SSDs. They're faster, and they're becoming more affordable. 512 to a terabyte, you can find them 512 for maybe $15 to $30 I've seen. You can see some for terabyte, which is, it's just standard, but nowadays I'd say go for 2, especially if you make videos such as me. 2 would be the sweet spot, but it can be up there. So $60 for maybe a 1 terabyte to over 100 or so for 2. You can find those though. Team Group, in my opinion, is pretty good. But there's two main types of SSDs. We have SATA SSDs, which are faster than HDDs, but limited by the SATA interface. And then we have NVMe SSDs, which plug directly into the motherboard via M.2 slots and offer much faster speeds. Like I said earlier, a 1 terabyte NVMe is perfect for most builds. It boots your system quickly, loads games fast. But let's say you have a lot of stuff on and you don't really want to spend a lot of money on an SSD. HDDs can be used for bulk storage. But now we're on number 6, your PSU, or power supply unit, whatever. Your PSU delivers power to every component. Choosing a good one is critical. You do not really want to mess up on this, especially for your safety. Look for maybe an 80 plus bronze or gold rated PSU, which means it runs efficiently, and the wattage depend on your components. A mid-range PC can use a 650 watt or 650W PSU, and the high end may need 750 watts to 1000. But modular or semi-modular PSUs make cable management easier, since you only use the cables you need. That's really it. Just make sure to stick to reliable names. Always search at least a good bit about your PSU. If you cheap out, you don't want to cause a fire. That is an issue. Be safe. And that leads us to number 7. Now we got cooling. Cooling is a big part of it. CPUs normally come with a stock cooler, but aftermarket or liquid coolers are often perform better and a little quieter. Air coolers like the Hyper 212 are reliable and affordable. Liquid coolers, especially like AIOs, all-in-one, like 240mm or 360mm units, are great, and they look nice, and they're pretty good in high-end builds, and especially for performance. Good airflow matters too. You want to get intake fans pulling in cool air and exhaust fans pushing air out. You often have it in the front as the intake fans. My bad, brain fart. And then the back is the exhaust. You can have them on top, as if you're fancy with it. Me personally, front, back, simple. I'm not bougie. But that leads us to number 8, where you got to plan for all this. This is the fun part, in my opinion. You don't really got to look at performance. You can mainly look at the aesthetics, but you got to make sure it fits your build. We're talking about the PC case. Popular models are like the NZXT H5 Flow, the Fractal Pop Air, and the Lian Li Land Cool series. But one thing is, you got to make sure they fit and have half decent airflow. Make sure the cable management is relatively easy to do. It'll just make your whole build look a lot cleaner. But I'm not your mom. I'm not gonna make it look clean. But this is mainly all up to you. You don't got to go in depth here. Just look it up. Tell me if you see something cool, and make a build on it. It's that simple. And for like my final few tips and the outro, you can call it. If you're going, whether you're going for high FPS, smooth editing, or just want a fast, quiet system, every component takes apart. Take your time, double check the compatibility. Make sure to always plan around what you need, not just what's trendy. If this video helps you understand PC parts better, drop a like and subscribe. But also, remember how I mentioned earlier, make sure it fits? Remember, there's this website called PCPartPicker.com. I'll put it in the description below. Look for that, and you can put each component, and it will tell you the price if it is in stock. It's a great website, one of the most popular out there. Good luck on building your PC or just finding one. Have a good one. Peace.